Let's look at two ancient stone ceremonial axes that probably get classified under things you didn't know were a thing. See the head there, the animal head, the face, the teeth? Well, that is modeled after an alligator gar, which of course is a fish that has no relation to alligators. Here's one. And if you're thinking, well, that's a weird animal to model your ritualistic axe off of, you're right. So we'll talk about why, or at least guess why. But first, let's talk about the people that made these two axes, that is, not the fish we're looking at. This is the Mississippian culture. And that's kind of a broad category. It stretched from the Midwestern U.S. to the Southeastern and went from about 800 AD to 1600. And this is a part of Native American history that's easily overlooked in the popular consciousness. It doesn't fit with the stereotypical view of Native American society in this half of the United States, or even in North America, because this was actually very hierarchical and they built large structures and monuments. And of course, I'm talking about the mounds like this. Now, they're very simplistic when we see them now, but there was more to them, as you can see here in this schematic. And they're the kind of thing only a complex society can make. The Mississippian culture was maybe the most complex one in North America. And that's why when you see something like this, you might well think of Mesoamerica, that kind of a thing. So yeah, not what most people equate with North American native history. The largest of the mounds, the Monk's Mound, is the equivalent of a 10-story tall building in terms of height, and its base is wider than the base of the Great Pyramid at Giza. But now let's go from earth to water and the alligator gar. These are now only found in North and Central America, so some of our overseas viewers might not know what this is. Well, it's a freshwater fish, so it'd be found in that part of the United States, those various parts that we saw on the map earlier, in rivers and places like that. But again, from the outside looking in, it seems like an odd animal to choose, right? Native cultures from the Americas, Europe, you name it, would of course find inspiration in the animal world. And, you know, you could have like the Aztec jaguar warriors. And then in Europe and elsewhere, you had wolf and bear warriors, that kind of a thing. Oh, this paper here is by Michael Speedle, who wrote an entire book on it. I rented it from Amazon. Didn't know you could do that, but I did, because the book is so expensive. Doing research for my next weapons book, regardless. For water animals, you could see a culture taking inspiration from, you know, alligator, crocodile, shark, that kind of a thing. So why this one here? Well, it does have nasty teeth. But if you don't know anything about this animal, then you're probably still quite unimpressed. Let's move on to this, then. Yeah, an alligator gar can get up to 10 feet long, and they say up to 350 pounds. It's not an apex predator, but pretty close to it in its environment. They say this animal is not a threat to humans. Doesn't look like it to me. If I was in a river and saw one of those, I would think of it as a threat. But anyway, it's a large, powerful animal, so maybe that has something to do with its ritualistic incorporation into items like this. But then again, my own channel shows evidence that people, at least roughly in this same area, I don't mean this part of North America, but just in the Americas, native culture would incorporate animals like the monkey, seen up top, and birds, seen at the bottom, into ceremonial stone objects. The one at the bottom is even an axe of sorts, so it's called a celt, a stone axe, which is what we're looking at today as well. And a bird, although I must say, if that's a bird, we can't say for certain, but if it is, and we think it is, then, you know, that's not a big, fearsome animal. Neither is a monkey. Monkey was an important food source in parts of Central America where this came from. Can't believe this thing only has 200 views. This is amazing. And it's like the coolest thing I've ever held. Anyway, the alligator gar was a food source, archaeological evidence proves, and for thousands of years. It's such a large animal, maybe it was something that was used for notable feasts, special occasions. That could be a part of this. But there's another possibility. It turns out that the gar was used to make important tools out of, like arrowheads, believe it or not. The scales from the fish are thought to have been used that way. We can't say for certain. See that quote there on the left? If it was used to make weapons, then that would certainly add some importance to it. But here's another quote from this same paper here. Much of the available ethnographic and ethnohistorical data for gar use by southeastern Indians describes the function of these species as related to practices of scratching and tattooing. So that's scratching as in ritual scarification. We have a few different possibilities there, and maybe more, but anyway, maybe this is why, quote, today the gar appears as the central element on the official seal of the Coasati, where it represents courage, wisdom, strength, and discipline, end quote. We also know from a 1928 citation, quote, among the Miccosukee in Florida, a dance was performed after men returned to the village following prolonged hunts in the fall, during which the male participants held wooden gar totems, end quote. And why does all of this, or how does any of this equal putting their likeness on a celt on a stone axe? I have no idea. There was even a garfish dance, by the way, among some tribes. So anyway, let's file all of this, like I said, under things you didn't know were a thing. You know, one way to think about this might be it's kind of like the bison, the buffalo, in plains culture. It was so important to your society as a food source and much more. You made multiple important things out of it, tools and such, blankets, you name it, that the animal was highly honored. My guess then is that's what's going on here with our ceremonial alligator gar stone axes. Thanks.